Sunday evening to be here. And my name's Nuala. I'm going to be hosting the call this evening. And there's a lot of us here tonight, just over 200 now and steadily creeping up. So for that reason, I'll ask people to keep themselves muted through the call. You can use the chat if you need help with anything technically, or to put any questions in, and our brilliant tech team will pick them up and try and help you with whatever you need. And yeah, I just want to say again, thank you for being here tonight and deciding to be part of making change. We know that now's the time to act, and we know it's going to take all of us working together to do this. So I'm so pleased to see all of you here. And now let's just take a minute to welcome each other. So if you've taken part in a rebellion before, if you want to just unmute yourself now and make some noise so we can hear you.
Hello.
Hey, so nice to have you here. And if this is going to be your first experience with XR coming out with us on the bus tour or in October, then do you want to unmute yourself and say hi now?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
First bus tour.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
You are very welcome here. So I also want to welcome everyone who's watching live on YouTube and Facebook. We can't hear you, but we're really pleased you're here, and we're going to be looking out for your questions in the Q&A section. And yeah, it's great to have you with us. So I'll just say a little bit about the structure of this open call. So we're living in times of multiple related crises, and I think all of us are here because we know something has to be done to stop the harm. So we'll start the call by hearing a bit about how the climate crisis and the cost of living crisis relate. And we know that the change in plans, the postponement of the Festival of Resistance, threw everything up in the air for a lot of people who put a lot of work in. And so we want to give you as much information as possible about what plans look like now. So we're going to have an update on the bus tour. We'll have an update on the weekend of resistance from the 14th to the 16th of October. And then we'll move to a Q&A section. So please keep track of your questions, and you can post them in the chat here on Zoom or in your chats on Facebook or YouTube, and we will pick them up and try to make sure we answer all of them. We will finish by about 9, but there's an invitation to stay on for breakout rooms for anyone who this would be their first time taking action, who's wanting to come on the 14th to ask their questions, and anyone who has general questions about the 14th as well. And another breakout room for anyone who wants to help out with the 15th and 16th, if you want to take on a role in the run-up or you want to help out on one of those days. So we've got those 2 options from 9 until 9:30 at the end of the call. So before we get started properly, I want to welcome the people who are here tonight to present information for us that's been gathered from circles and spaces around XR, and to answer your questions. So that's our open call crew. And I'm going to invite the crew to unmute yourselves one by one and say who you are. So as I've already said, I'm Nuala. I'm hosting the call tonight, and I'm also part of XR's media team. And I will pass to the brilliant Ned, who's doing tech support tonight.
Hello, lovely to see everybody. I'll pass on to the next person.
Hello, lovely to see you all. I'm Ams, and I'm doing tech as well.
Hi, I'm Alana. I'm on the media team in XR. I'm here to set the context.
Hi, my name's Blythe, and I'm going to give you an update on what's happening with the bus tour, and I'm going to pass on to Andy.
Thanks very much, Blythe. Yeah, I'm Andy. I'm here this evening to talk about the action that is happening on the 14th of October. Hand over to Dimmy.
Hi, I'm Dimmy.
I'm going to be giving you all an update on the 15th and 16th of October activities, and yeah, here to answer questions later as well.
Thanks, Dimi, and I think it's just Miranda left to say hi. I think we might have lost Miranda. Okay, but Miranda is going to be here later. She's from the programming team, and she also can help answer questions about the 15th and 16th when we get to that section of the call. But for now, let me pass over to Alana to set a bit of the context for us.
Thanks, Nuala. Just echoing what Nuala was saying about huge thanks to everyone for being here on a late Sunday. Really exciting always to see so many faces. So I just want to talk a little bit about the climate crisis and the cost of living scandal as it's come to be known. We're seeing a sort of intersection of converging crises taking place globally, but certainly here in the UK. And the climate crisis and cost of living are intimately linked, and they share many of the same root causes and could have shared solutions were there the political will. Because the climate crisis and the crisis in our society are part of the same story. It's an old story where the majority of us are expected to pay for crises not of our making, while a tiny minority profit from our struggle. Obviously, everybody can see what's happening in politics in the UK. We have a new Prime Minister who was very quick to give the green light to fracking here in the UK. We have a government that is bending over backwards to protect big oil and gas company profits at the expense of ordinary people. The result of this is an unprecedented cost of living scandal and a climate crisis that is already costing lives all over the world and threatening the future of humanity. We can see that big oil has no intention of acting on climate and reducing emissions. We can see, if we have a look at the US right now, the congressional committee that's shown big oil companies admitting to gaslighting the public over their green initiatives. Earlier this year, the boss of BP described the company as a cash machine. And since then, BP and the four other biggest oil and gas companies have made profits of nearly £50 billion. They're making these bonanza profits while over 30 million people have been displaced by flooding in Pakistan. 50% crop failures are in the UK following the drought this summer, and millions of people are facing inflated food prices and impossible bills which they simply won't be able to pay. Our new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, announced last week that the government will use public money to pay for an energy price cap that will still leave many choosing between heating and eating. She did this because the government's primary priority is to protect the freedom of the world's biggest oil and gas companies to continue making ever-increasing profits. So this is the power of the fossil fuel lobby in Westminster. We can see it playing out right in front of us. And our third demand in XR is for a citizens' assembly on climate and ecological justice. We want an alternative to politics captured by fossil fuel lobbyists. It's absolutely essential that we upgrade our politics when responding to the climate crisis and cost of living crisis. So this is why we need to work together to build a movement that's too big to ignore, and come together with other movements to build a mass movement which can put pressure on the government and continue to put pressure on the government. And it is possible to do this. We know that there were Ipsos said in August found that 8 out of 10 people in the UK are concerned about climate, and over 52% think that the government's plan to get to net zero by 2050 is too late. So that's around 35 million people who think that the government's plan isn't good enough, basically. So where are those people and how do we reach them? So our bus tour and the Weekend of Resistance in October will help us reach those people. Those people who know something has to change and who desperately want to do something and want to come out on the streets. So, we're doing this in solidarity with the people of Pakistan, in solidarity with workers striking for better conditions and pay, and in solidarity with everyone who refuses to pay bills that force them to choose between heating their homes and feeding their children. I'll pass over to Blythe now to give an update on the bus tour.
Thanks very much, Alana. And yes, as Alana said, the bus tour aims to mobilise those people across the country around these issues and the links to the climate crisis. And so the XR bus crews are ready and raring to tour the country with that purpose in mind. And this will be as part of this huge push to grow the movement bigger than ever before. The Queen's death unfortunately meant we had to push back the bus tours by a week. But we found a way with participation from the local groups in a people's assembly demonstrating participatory democracy. So we found a way to reincorporate the stops with the local groups' help. So from that first week that we had to take out of the tour to push back the tour, we are reincorporating those stops and visiting them with the buses after the 16th. So we'll go back to those stops then. For now, all the 3 buses are ready and they're going to be on their way on Tuesday. And they're decorated with all the vibrant XR colours. And as you will see, when they hit the road and we start sharing photos and videos on XR's social media accounts. So look out for those. It's going to be a very exciting prospect. And these 3 buses are packed with essentials for mass mobilising. They've got banners on them and art blocks and outreach materials of all kinds and all sorts of important things like projectors for different events and amps and equipment and solar panels, of course, to power it all. And there's the first bus, the West bus, as you can see with the map here, will head out to Belfast via Bangor. And then the middle bus will head out right up to Inverness via Manchester and then Edinburgh. And the East bus will head off via Leeds to Newcastle and also via Leicester. And you can see where each heart is. On this map, there'll be a People's Assembly. So there will be 10 People's Assemblies across the country throughout the next 3 weeks, all led by XR. And then there'll be an additional 3 taking place after the 16th of October, when we will have the rest of the routes covered and we'll create a separate map for these routes. These will be closer to London. And we will also have a People's Assembly taking place online. The results of these People's Assemblies and all the discussions that take place in them will eventually be shared with the movement and the public. And the question we will be asking everyone across the country in these People's Assemblies is, how might we respond to the multiple crises that we face together? So that links back to what Alana was saying, setting the context with all these linked crises we face. And so everyone's ready and very excited. There's a really positive mood amongst the crew of the buses. And everyone has multiple skills on board, which they're going to bring to the local groups and build capacity in all the local groups and regions along the way. So on the buses, we have data analysts who will measure the impact of the outreach we're doing on the buses and collect the results of the people's assemblies to present later on and share those online. And then we have content creators on each bus who will take photos and videos and share those on social media. We also have art blockers ready to engage people with creativity. And we have outreach rebels and talkers and trainers who will upskill and mobilize people across the whole country. So now I'm going to hand over to Andy, who's going to tell you about the mass participation action on October 14th when the buses are back in London.
Brilliant. Thanks, Blythe, for that. That's massively appreciated. So on October the 14th, we obviously need somewhere for all these wonderful people that we've mobilized to go to and attend. And this morning I was on Facebook and I saw a meme, and the text on that meme read, "What can I do? I'm only one person," said 500,000 people, which I think sums up really nicely what XR is all about. And that's when we act collectively, we have huge amounts of power. And it's important that people know what to expect on October the 14th when they come and join us in this mass participation, non-violent action. But it's also really important to remember that there'll be 2 weeks of action ahead of us, where all these other movements have come together to take action throughout the whole of October. And a lot might change in that time. So we need to be super flexible with our plan so that we can respond to those kind of changing dynamics that happen on the street. But for now, this is what we do know, which is the when, where, who, what, why, and how. So the when is very simple. That's from midday on Friday, the 14th of October. So hopefully now some of the basics will be posted in the chat, so you don't have to write all this stuff down. So the when is from midday on the 14th of October. The where is Downing Street / Whitehall. So we will be going very much to the head of power. Who? That's everyone. Everyone is welcome and encouraged to join us in this mass participation action. So please come along, bring your friends, bring your family, encourage everyone to attend, because that's where our power lies when we come together and act. The peaceful, non-violent mass participation action, which happens on Friday the 14th, will harness the anger around the cost of living crisis. And it will also allow space to non-violently and visually express our disdain for a system that is favoring energy company profits ahead of people. So why? Well, the whole of October will see an unignorable disruption from a multitude of different groups that will collectively demonstrate that huge swathes of our population are not happy with the current political landscape. And Extinction Rebellion will be part of that wider ecology of movements pushing for political change. So how are we going to do that? Well, the action will have space for everyone to participate in a really meaningful way. Again, with the emphasis that our collective power exists in taking action together en masse. And people would not be showing up specifically to get arrested, but there'll be plenty of space for you if you feel that arrest is appropriate. Like the rest of the phases of rebellion, we're looking at defining a win on our own terms. So we want to finish that day on a high and to have learned several lessons in the process. So the success of the action will not be defined by the number of arrests or the amount of press we get, but more on our ability to prepare rebels for the big one in April. We want to deliver an action that has kind of resilience built into it, to encourage every rebel to step up into their power in preparation for April, and to understand what it feels like to take action with thousands of others. And in the process, embedding trust and resilience through this peaceful upholding of our right to protest in the defiance of the state. The action will be really simple in terms of logistics. It will have a strong, inspiring visual element that will highlight the link between the energy companies and the government, that will clearly demonstrate in a really, really empowering way that we can't afford this anymore. So I'm going to hand over to Dimi now, who's going to talk about the rest of the plans for that weekend. So I'll pass you over to Dimi now.
Thanks, Andy. Oh, that got me really excited. Can't wait. So yes, you all know that we had to cancel our Festival of Resistance. So since having to make that difficult decision to postpone our occupation in Hyde Park, our crews have been working really hard and really quickly to ensure that the key elements, the vision and the essence of the Festival of Resistance are not lost. So we're in the process of weaving together a weekend of resistance in October, so the 15th and 16th of October, with a narrative that will run through the 3 days of action, so that including the 14th. So following on from the day of mass civil disobedience that Andy has described on the 14th, with the message that we can't afford this anymore, we will then shift our focus on outreach and mobilization on the Saturday with a message of change is now. We will come together to platform powerful speakers, listen to amazing music, share stories, share food, and reach out to the public and do creative outreach. And in the evening from 5 p.m. onwards, we will head out en masse to a big creative action. So you might have been looking forward to this as the Friday night pre-festival action. So you might know about this action already. It's essentially a paint the streets special, cover the Capitol. You might have heard it with that name, which is essentially we will go out and we'll cover the Capitol with our powerful messages and imagery. And a lot of work has gone into creating these amazing posters, these amazing materials for this. And it promises to be a visually disruptive action like never before. So there's two action choices within this. The first is replacing tube carriage adverts alongside public outreach. And the second is switching hundreds of bus stop adverts. So this is called subvertising. So we'll share it. We've just shared in the chat now 3 links if you want to get involved. So the first one is the Cover the Capitol action brief, and that includes designs and it will explain the action in detail and what it entails. The second link is a sign up link if you want to take part in the action, and you'll find more information once you join that. And there's also a Telegram channel that you can join, and that's the third link in that chat. So that's Saturday. Then on Sunday, the 16th, we will gather one last time to reclaim our future, reclaim the future. We will start the day with a powerful and symbolic march led by the youth with a really powerful image. More details about the march will come out soon, probably within this week coming. So we will march with the youth leading us, and then we will head to a regenerative green space where we will come together, connect, reflect, and model deliberative democracy through a big people's assembly to mark the end of our weekend of resistance and the start of our next phase of resistance leading us to the big one. So we're not calling it a closing ceremony because we are in active resistance, and because the weekend is over, the idea is to harness the energy of that weekend and the phases that came before it. So the bus tour and our actions earlier in September, and take that energy and go back home and mobilize and mobilize and mobilize because we need all of us to really make a difference. So this is how the weekend will look like, and I'll pass back to Nuala.
Thanks, Dimi. Okay, so I'm just going to say a little bit about the ways you can get involved before we move on to the Q&A section. So just a reminder that all the links that are going in the Zoom chat now will also be included in a follow-up email that will go to everyone who's here this evening. So don't worry too much if you haven't managed to capture them all. And I think there was one that just went in there that wasn't working for Paint the Streets. So there'll be one that will go in a sec, which is for the Paint the Streets Telegram, and we'll try to get that Paint the Streets Google form working for the follow-up email as well. So in terms of getting involved, there's a couple of things you can do, and I think someone's going to post the links for what I'm about to talk about in the chat as well. So there's a urgent rebellion roles section on the volunteer website with specific roles we're looking to fill. And there's a couple of those, but especially right now, we're looking for bus drivers for a couple of like few day gaps along the bus tour route. So if you know anyone, or you yourself might be able to do that, if you've got the right driving license, then pass that on or apply. And then if you know you want to help out with one of the teams for the bus tour or the Weekend of Resistance, you can join the We Are All Crew broadcast channel on Telegram, and that there you'll get updates on the roles that are needed and ways that you can get involved with them. And then specifically around the Paint the Streets action, Cover the Capital, that kind of subvertising action that Dimi just talked about, there is a Telegram channel that you can join for that. So that's just gone in the chat as well. And finally, if there's any trainings that you want to do before taking part in October, you can go to the movement broadcast for the talks and trainings weekly summary in there as well. So those are all some ways to get involved. And then the other thing, of course, is that you can stay on here after we close the call at 9 for half an hour breakout rooms where you can actually just speak to someone about how to take part and get involved as well. So let's take some of the questions that have been flowing into the chat. And I think that we've got one in there already, which is, what can rebels do to prepare for October? So Andy, I think you were going to answer that.
Thanks, Nuala. Yeah, so there'll be quite a lot of action taking place in October, and it's really, really key that rebels are kind of prepared for the action that we're planning on taking. So we're kind of asking that all rebels try and participate in a Know Your Rights training, an NVDA, which is a non-violent direct action training, and also de-escalation trainings. These are three really, really key trainings which will really help prepare rebels, whether you're new or if you're an existing rebel. It's really important to kind of revisit those trainings every now and then and get a kind of refresher for them. So in that regard, it's really handy, and I've just posted in the chat there to sign up to the movement broadcast, which will give you a weekly update of all the trainings that are available and how to participate in those trainings. Most of them are done on Zoom like this, but those three trainings in particular are really, really key, and we really, really kind of would like to ask every rebel to participate in those three trainings if possible.
Thanks so much, Andy. And actually, while you're talking, I think there was another question that you were going to answer about whether back office support is needed. I think it was Joan who was asking whether that support was needed and they could volunteer.
Yeah, definitely. So for people who don't know what back office is our legal support network, which kind of helps rebels after they've been arrested. So it's a place you can phone after you've been arrested, and they will notify the lawyer. They will also notify your family that you've been arrested, and take care of that kind of process, which can be a little bit daunting. If you aren't able to attend the rebellion, helping with back office is a fantastic job that you can do from home, and you can kind of work in a shift pattern along with lots of other rebels who are volunteering to take part in that. And ultimately, all you're doing is kind of answering the phone and logging in people who've been arrested onto a spreadsheet, and helping that kind of whole thing facilitate and run really, really smoothly. So there will be back office needed, probably across all 3 of those days, to be fair. So if that's something you can help with, I've posted in the chat there's an email address that you can email, backoffice@riseup.net, and you'll be able to volunteer and be part of that team who helps with that, which is a really, really important role.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Andy. There's a lot of roles in Extinction Rebellion that don't necessarily get seen, and they make everything work, and they make sure that people get taken care of and thought about, and it's so important. So it's great that that's happening and that people are keen to get involved. So there's a couple of questions that I think Miranda might be able to speak to. So one was from Chris Jeffries about, are we protesting during COP27? I thought there was a demo the mid-Saturday, maybe 12th of November. And then another question on, are we involved in the coalition activities on the 1st and 2nd of October? If you could speak to those, Miranda.
Yeah, sure. Hi. So yeah, I'm Miranda from XR's Relationship Circle. On the 1st of October, yeah, there are coalition actions happening that day. The We All Want to Just Stop Oil coalition, which is Just Stop Oil, Peace and Justice Project, Fuel Poverty Action, and now CND as well, Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. They're doing 3 days of action, and they're all in London, starting on the 1st, and it's marching and sitting in the road. On the 1st, there are also other groups taking action as well. So Enough is Enough has called rallies across the country, and rallies have been announced in 13 cities so far. So that's an invitation to join your local one. And then Don't Pay UK is also calling local distributed actions on that day as well. And then in addition to that, there are strikes happening that day. So the RMT, ASLEV, and Royal Mail workers are going on strike. So there's an invitation from them to join picket lines and support workers. So there'll be a range of options for XR rebels to choose to do on that day if they want to get involved and show solidarity. We're not officially joining any of those or signing up to be part of any of it, but everyone is encouraged and welcome to join any of it, and the organisers of all of them encourage and welcome participation from XR rebels as well. And then in terms of the COP coalition, yes, they have called a day of action on the 12th. Again, it's going to be local distributed actions, so there'll be marches happening in cities and local areas across the country, and it will be those COP coalition local groups again organising that on the 12th. And I've been going to the coalition meetings. We haven't yet discussed in XR what our involvement will be, but at the very least, I'm sure, we would encourage rebels to go along and take part and march. The focus is very much on climate justice, but that's going to be a month after our weekend. So that's something that will stand separately to all of this and be an opt-in for people if they're still got energy and ready to do stuff.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Miranda. So there's a couple of questions about the bus tour that I will go to Blythe for. So one of those is from Mick, and Mick's asking, does the distribution of stops on the bus tour indicate anything about the distribution of XR groups? And there's nothing around London. And then another question about the bus tour, how is the input of local groups being planned? I'm from the High Peak group, and I'll probably go to Manchester. Sorry, I don't know who that question came from, but Blythe, if you could speak to both of those.
Okay, cool, thanks. So the reason there's not very many stops around London at all is because of the Queen's funeral. So we had to cut part of the route out of the routes. which was going to be the part of the route where we were traveling from the beginning of September. So now we're going to do that part of the route after the 16th, after the weekend of Resistance. So we will be doing that area around London. It's not like we don't care about that area or anything. We're going to go back to them after. So you'll just have to wait for the map for that. And then the other thing was the input of the local groups is being organised via the gardeners, via their network through all the local groups and through local group coordinators. So we now have there are contact points for every single stop on the route in the local groups, and local group coordinators will be in contact with those. So if you have any questions about your local group's participation in the bus tour, you can contact your local group coordinator, and they will be able to let you know whether or not your local group is involved or how. And the Manchester People's Assembly is taking place on the 24th and 25th of September. I hope that answers all those questions.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Blythe. So Carol actually has also asked, will you have leaflets informing people about climate change and inviting them to join XR? And will my local group have access? So I think that someone has put in our answers box to check the movement broadcast on Telegram for that. So I think they're going to put the link to that in the chat here now, but that's the place to go. And yes, we definitely do have those and they can be accessed. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions now for Andy. So Mick said, as a relative newbie, can you explain what exactly art blocking is? And then I don't know if it's from the same person or someone else, but someone saying, can we have the date for the big one in April so we can plan for it? And Andy's going to speak to that as well. I'll just say quickly that you will have that date very, very soon, and make sure that you're signed up to the XR mailing list. So if you go to our website and sign up to get our emails, then you will have that date very soon. Andy.
Thanks, Nuala. Yes, in XR, if you're new to XR, there'll be all kinds of terminology that's probably a little bit alien to you. We're a big fan of an acronym also. Art blocking is a kind of like creative process. The wonderful creative and design team produce these beautiful carved wood blocks of some of the graphics that we use, as you can see behind me. And quite often we will have an art blocking station which is used for outreach. So you can print your own t-shirts and print your own stickers and posters and all other manner of things using these art blocks, which are a great way to communicate with the public and engage with the public and start having these open discussions. It's also a great way for us to produce flags and banners, but also when we're out on the streets, so that we can kind of, wear proudly on our chest the messages that we're carrying. So art blocking is basically a printing process. Great for outreach. The other question, which Nuala alluded to, is the fact that the April date hasn't been made public yet, but it will be very, very soon. We're aware that we want people to be able to attend April in their masses, and the sooner we can get that date out, the sooner everyone can start booking their transport and accommodation so that they can attend. And I believe that will be coming probably in the next couple of weeks or so, if not actually at the weekend in October.
Thanks, Andy. That's brilliant. So there's a question about camping from Mike, which Dimmy's going to speak to, and I think just give us a bit more of a general overview of accommodation for the weekend of the 14th to the 16th.
Yeah, thanks. So there will be camping. What's different this time round is that we're not, during the Festival of Resistance, we were encouraging rebels to come down and camp in order to hold the site for 3 days. This time round, we don't have an occupation as such in the same way. So the three days of action are in different locations. And so accommodation looks a little bit different this time around. There is a team that's going to be looking into setting up a campsite somewhere in a park in London, not a royal park. It's probably somewhere further out. And if any of you have been to a rebellion before and camped, is the same team that does the campsites every time. There's also an online platform called Human Hotel, which is kind of like a rebel Airbnb, where people in London offer their spare rooms or sofas for rebels to come and stay. And we will also be looking into booking indoor halls, like accommodation, as we've done in the past. Capacity in those won't be massive. We usually get around 200 spaces in those. So there is different types of accommodation that we will try and sort out. But also the ask is that if you're able to arrange your own accommodation, then you should go ahead and do that if you're able to. And if you're not, we will try and accommodate people.
Thanks so much, Dimi. And actually, just while we're with you, one more question from Glenn Newell, which is, what are the reasons for not just shifting the festival at Hyde Park to a later date?
That is a good question and is a big question. There's many reasons for not just shifting it as it was. Mainly they're around capacity, both capacity of the crews involved. So having to cancel it was a really difficult decision we had to make, and there was loads and loads of people who had put hours and hours of work towards this, and having to cancel in the last minute was a heavy blow for a lot of us that were working towards it. So the immediate response is to let's just move it and do it again, because we really wanted this to happen. But if we're being honest with our capacity, and we are being honest with we're honoring our regenerative culture that we're trying to have in XR, rescheduling this big operation 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks in the future, we just didn't feel like we could do it justice. So that's one reason. And then extending it further meant that the weather will change dramatically, and it will be a lot colder, and we couldn't expect people to camp outdoors, and it could have been raining for 3 days, so it wouldn't have the same feeling that we wanted the festival to have. And then the third reason is because we have phase 3, the bus tour, and phase 4 in this rebellion, which originally was just a day of action on the Friday the 14th. We felt it was a smoother kind of transition to add a weekend after this action, where we can move certain elements of the festival. So the activities that are happening and the actions that are happening on the 15th and 16th is stuff that was going to happen earlier in September. So we've kept the highlights in a way of the festival, which is the mass participation, inspiring, kind of coming together and feeding off each other's energies, outreach and mobilization. So we've kept that, but it just looks different because we, as Andy said at the start, we have to be adaptable, and things change, and the police response changes. And we feel like if we were trying to occupy Hyde Park that weekend, having just done a disruptive action, it wouldn't have the same impact as we wanted the festival to have. We wanted the festival to be inclusive and safe in some way, and we wanted the police to facilitate us being there, which is why we're liaising. There's just no way that we will be able to do that in October. So there's a lot in there. It's a big question, but hopefully this makes sense.
Thanks, Dimi. That's great. And I know huge amounts of work went into booking acts and building relationships with other groups and movements who are going to speak. And there are plans in the pipeline to make use of all of that work at a later date, which we'll update you with when we know more. But there's a huge amount of work went in, and people are working to not have that wasted as well. So now I have a couple of questions for Blythe about the bus tour. So where do you find out the date, time and place where the bus arrives in Manchester? That's from Patricia. And Tony Waterson's wanting to know where can he get info on the bus tour in Scotland? If you could speak to those questions, Blythe.
Yes, a very simple answer to those questions is just by looking at the link on the website, which I've just posted in the chat, where this will be updated as we go along with more and more details. So you can see that there is a link for the east, west and central routes, and when and where will be at every stop.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Blythe. And now I've got two questions I think Andy can speak to. So Gordon's asking, why aren't we joining the 1st of October officially? And Ruth is wondering, will rebels putting posters up on Friday 14th of October be safe from arrest, or is there a possibility of arrest from that action? And I'll just say I think that action, the fly posting action, is on Saturday 15th of October, but Andy will speak to the riskiness of it. Go for it.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll address Gordon's question first. It was kind of felt, Gordon, that a lot of our XR rebels are very supportive of Just Stop Oil anyway. And it's one of those things that's quite divisive in XR. Half our rebels are really supportive, half can't stand Just Stop Oil. So it's a very difficult place to be. But it was felt that because of the different dates, our rebels who wanted to attend the Just Stop Oil thing on the 1st of October are likely to attend it anyway. So we will also be encouraging rebels to attend on the 1st of October if they can. We're aware that traveling up to London multiple times is really, really expensive. The other thing that came to play in those decisions about dates were we did actually communicate with Just Stop Oil, as well as Animal Rebellion, as well as lots of other groups who are all taking action throughout October in this big, wider umbrella ecology of movements. And lots of dates were picked tactically and really quite specifically to have the biggest impact across the whole of October. And as at XR, we announced October the 14th really quite early on. So at this point, it didn't make sense to then change that date and bring it forward, especially after a lot of people had already booked transport and accommodation for the 14th. So it's not that we're opposed to forming or supporting them officially, but there is this wider umbrella of movements that we're all working together and strategically aligned to have the biggest impact across the whole of October. So hopefully that answers that question. The second question was about the legalities of the Paint the Streets action, which is on the Saturday evening. To date, I don't think anyone has been arrested or charged for taking part in any of the Paint the Streets activities, as far as I know. The other activities that we'll be looking at on this Paint the Streets are replacing some of the tube ads on the trains. This was done last rebellion and no one was challenged or charged in those instances either. So we can't say for sure that you're not going to be arrested doing that, but it's a relatively low risk action and is like especially on the tubes, it's a really fantastic way to engage with the public and start outreach and having really, really interesting conversations with the public, who from previous experience when we've done this have generally been really, really supportive. And when you're communicating the facts in a really clear and concise way, like the tube adverts do, it's very hard to kind of argue with that and your justification of doing it. So yeah, it's relatively low risk, but as with all things that we do, there is obviously still a risk attached to it.
Thanks, Andy, that's super helpful. So there's a question that I'll have a go at answering now from Tom. So Tom said, can the media team find somebody who can engage well with the general public, as there's still a perception of XR as being full of middle-class lefties? So yeah, we have a really brilliant group of spokespeople, a lot of them who have kind of developed their skills within XR over the last few years. And I agree with you, it's super important that we put people forward that people can see themselves in, or who aren't who they fit, who don't fit with their stereotype kind of thing. So there's some great people on the team, like Todd Smith, who's a former airline pilot. I think it's quite a shock for people when they realize that there's people who worked in the airline industry in XR. And yeah, I think what else do I want to say about this? Basically, I agree with you 100%. We're always looking for new spokespeople. I think it takes time to build those skills. Yeah, we tend to work with people over it's been like years with some of them to build up to the point where they can really take those interviews on and do a good job. And there's some great people in there. And every time we do rebellions, we get more opportunities to put them out there and for them to get practice and to connect with people through those shows. Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look. I think there's maybe some concern about the amount of links in the chat. I'll just remind people again that there's going to be a follow-up email for everyone who registered on Zoom, which will contain all of the links that we've put in the chat. Okay, so the last couple of questions. So Pax is asking, is there a place at these actions for those who don't feel they can safely get arrested for professional, racial or disability reasons? And I think Andy's going to speak to that.
Hi, Nuala, thanks. Yes, we try and make all kind of Extinction Rebellion actions as accessible as possible, and we try and create space for people to participate at whichever level they're comfortable. So certainly most of the actions that are happening, especially if they're mass participation, are open, and we have an open invite to invite people into those spaces. But obviously there are people who are likely to be more at risk within those spaces, whether that's because of race or disability or any other issues. So we try and encourage people to participate up to the level that they feel comfortable with. And it's very difficult for us to know how the police are going to respond to situations, especially if there's going to be 2 weeks of action before we take action on the 14th. The police at that point may actually be like, very responsive and acting very quickly. But typically in a protest scenario, the police will give you like 4 or 5 opportunities to remove yourself from that protest. And typically after the first warning, if you're feeling uncomfortable in that situation, you do typically have a really good opportunity to leave and remove yourself from the high risk area. And quite often it will be quite apparent where the risk is within a wider protest, because there'll be a heavier police presence there. But again, we can't guarantee how the police are going to react. You would be incredibly unfortunate if the police were just to come in and start arresting people randomly without any warning. Typically, there's plenty of opportunity They don't have the capacity to arrest everyone, so they try and avoid arresting people as much as possible. So they will give you a whole process of warnings, which normally are enough for you to be able to remove yourself. In that regard, we also have quite a lot of stewards around. If you're feeling unsafe within a protest, or you feel like the police are being aggressive,
Oh, I think we're losing you, Andy. But I think what Andy was saying is that there is usually stewards present at an action, and if you're having issues with the police, they're people you can go to for help. Okay, so I think we'll take one last question before we wrap up. So Pamela's asking, if you could only do one day, which of the 14th, 15th or 16th is the most important? And I think Miranda was going to speak to that.
I think there isn't a sort of most important. I think it depends what you want to participate in. So the Friday is going to be more of an edgy protest with more, with a target, and kind of it's about getting our message across, about trying to sort of really drive change, and will contain a little bit more risk. Then Saturday is going to be more about reaching out to the public, and also like being together in a space. Hopefully there should be some really good programming that day, some great music and speeches and things like that, although it's all to be confirmed. So that's more about mobilizing other people and kind of education and like some of what the festival was trying to do. And then Sunday, it will be a protest, but a much softer one, and then a more kind of regenerative space afterwards, like coming together and talking to each other. So that's sort of more about being together. So if you want an edgy protest, come on the Friday. If you want music and speeches and you want to learn, you want to hand out leaflets, and you want to do some postering, do the Saturday. If you want to like be together and kind of meet people and get to know other people, come on the Sunday.
Thanks so much, Miranda. And for everyone who can, I think we would really love people to come on all the days, and that, different days might be more uncomfortable for you. For some people, it's more comfortable taking action. For others, it's more comfortable doing outreach. And we know that for all of us, we have to step outside of our comfort zones to make change. That's a part of it, whatever we're doing, that we have to step up and do things that are uncomfortable for us. So just consider that in making your choices if you have to choose between the days, and there'll be friendly people and support on every day that you come. Okay, so we're going to wrap up the call now. So if you want to stay on for the breakout rooms about October 14th or the 15th, 16th days, then stick around, and if not, then thank you so much for joining, and thank you for joining on YouTube and Facebook as well. And we will see everyone who can make it on that weekend in October.